So, good afternoon and welcome to the second of our webinars hosted by Holly Beckett. The topic is, as always, staying calm through COVID. So last week we heard from Holly in the first workshop, which was Stress Begins in the Mind, what damage stress does to our body, and that the World Health Organization has stated that the #1 killer in the Western world in the 21st century will be stress-related illnesses and disease. With that in mind, we all have our own reasons to look at ways in which we can protect and manage our well-being and safeguard our mental health. Following her Nuffield Scholarship in 2015, Holly went on to develop the Focused Farmers Programme and bring some tools and practices to the agricultural community. These have shown remarkable results for those that have taken part. Thank you to you all for taking part today, and I'm now going to hand over to Holly for the second session in our Stay Calm Through COVID series.
Thanks, Charlotte. So yes, welcome back everyone, and thank you for turning up. And as Charlotte has said, I've got to this moment in time primarily from taking a Nuffield Scholarship, which many of you know is amazing. And if anybody's watching this after and thinking of taking one, do it. So I originally started looking, was really interested in leadership and the part that emotional intelligence played in that. And I was looking for practical tools to increase that. We're all inspired and motivated by different people, but what could I practically do to develop an emotional intelligence? So the title of this workshop is Mental Training Produces Results Quickly. So on my Nuffield, I largely looked outside of the agricultural industry and what would I find to bring back to ag. And I came across, in terms of developing emotional intelligence and our leadership skills, a number of tools. But what I was realizing was I didn't pay enough attention in my life to be developing them and bringing them to my life. And then I came across mindfulness, and all of these companies that you can see here had introduced mindfulness in some form or another to their employees, and benefits that it was bringing to them. So I thought I'd just revisit a little bit of my why. Why did I want to promote mindfulness more in the agricultural industry? And as I said last week, if you don't know your why at any given time, then why you're doing something, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. So starting at the top here, I believe that mindfulness is actually can bring qualities that moves beyond resilience, and we're facing growing pressures in the ag industry. And personally, I see that's not just within the agriculture industry, but we're seeing quite a lot of industry disruption from outside of that, which is also putting pressure on us. And we need to be aware of that. We need to pay attention to it. It allows company growth through developed management and leadership styles, which perhaps we need to be looking at to progress our businesses forwards. Always a little controversial when I say this. It reduces accident rates because accidents in 99% of the times do not just happen. We're not paying attention. Our mind is somewhere else. It's not on the job. It helps, as I say, with this developing emotional intelligence, developing your soft skills, which I don't know why they were ever called soft skills, because they're hardcore: communication and leadership, and within your workforce for an expanding industry, and not just within leadership, within those in your team as well. So as ag is expanding, we're having to bring in more customer service roles. And that, again, involves this idea of emotional intelligence and communicating with others better. Leadership It's about self-leadership, and as I think I explained last week, leadership is for everyone. You're all a leader, at least, of your own life. And actually, I think when we learn more about leadership, we become better followers. We understand our position in any organization and what role we play as that cog. It aids in the development and retention of skills and talent in the industry, something that is, I think, a challenge for agriculture, and we're talking about. We've got millennials coming into the industry now, or are already present, and they think and operate differently. If we go back to what I was talking about last week in terms of how we develop through those psychological snapshots and our experiences in time, and as we're growing up, this younger generation has lived through a different time, and that has affected how they think, operate, the model of the world that they have, their version of reality. And it allows an expanded mindset, and to develop that and paying more attention, we can notice more opportunities. But just coming down to the bottom here, I believe overall that it can take our mental health and well-being from good to great. And I think that that is actually a foundation of all those other things here. So that's lots of whys. And perhaps you will relate to some of these as your why moving forward. So just to pick up, I keep talking about this idea of emotional intelligence, and there's 4 main pillars, and traditionally we have our societies operated really on, you know, in terms of success, on perhaps our IQ, our intellectual quota. But I was always kind of really interested in people such as Richard Branson, Sir Alan Sugar, not coming out of school with many qualifications, which we would traditionally associate with a high IQ, yet they were incredibly successful in their own right. I just will add this point as well. I don't see success, and when I'm talking about success, it's not about how much cash you've got in the bank, it's not about what car you drive or how big your house or your farm is. Success is about you achieving what you want to in your life, whatever that is. So 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. We've got self-awareness, being aware of perhaps the thoughts that are going on in our mind, what's going on in our body. Self-management, perhaps being able to manage those thoughts a little bit better, and in turn our behavior. Our social awareness, so aware of what's going on with other people, really listening to them, listening to the language that they're using and observing their behavior, and in turn social management, being able to communicate to them in a way that they'll understand. Perhaps I mentioned last week, communication is the response you get. If somebody is not understanding you, well, you can point the finger all you like and say it's their fault, but ultimately the power lies with you to change your communication so that they understand you. And just a little recap, we talked about how stress begins in your own mind, very much from the thoughts that we have or the emotions, and that cycle. If we're having negative emotion, it can evoke a negative thought, and that will keep going round to affect our behavior. Equally, if we're having positive emotions, we're often having positive thoughts, and then we kind of get on the upward spiral. Very much thinking about how our behavior then affects the next action in our life and the response we get from other people, and this circle continues. And these thoughts create emotions, create this physiological response, and when it's stress related, we saw all the negative effects that can have. And that's not just thinking things about and our perception of what's going on. It's often thinking things that from these 70,000 thoughts that are going through our mind every day, they're not actually true. They're just our mind trying to work out what's going on, but quite often we'll latch onto it and we'll see it as our truth, and it can all go a little bit haywire. So what can we do about it? I'm just going to bring myself back to the group if I can, and have a little bit of feedback on anybody who did the homework that I set, which was optional. Let's start at the bottom. Hands up, anybody who watched the selective attention test. Kate, and now the question is, on the spot, did you see the gorilla? That's all I'll say for now. Did anybody do anything differently? If you want to just chat as well and give me an idea of what you did. Martin Steer did something differently. Do you want to put something in the chat, Martin? Tell us what you did. Anybody get dressed backwards? Russ? Did everybody get dressed backwards for the first time that they intended to, or did they get dressed first before and then thought, oh, I'll have to do it tomorrow? And that's cool. You missed that time, let it go and do it tomorrow. Charlotte, brushed my teeth with the left hand and it was a challenge. I should have put a disclaimer: if anybody knocks their teeth out whilst they're trying this challenge, I don't take any responsibility. Brush teeth backwards, frustrating and messy. And dressing the wrong way around was really awkward. So it's interesting, we've got these judgments there. It's frustrating or it's awkward, but you are doing something different. And what we talked about was habituation last week. Once we learn how to do something and the mind thinks it knows how to do it, it'll start to do it automatically without really paying it attention or giving it much thought. So when challenging yourselves with these very small day-to-day things, you're doing things differently and you will be activating these different areas in the brain, which are incredibly important for operating. And what was the other thing? Noticing your thoughts, I think I talked about. Did people find that they were perhaps noticing things, picking themselves up on continual thoughts that had now become a worry, or perhaps picking themselves up on not being particularly kind to themselves? Kind of nods. Cutting trees by another method than normal was also quite interesting. I've just felt my stress response come up there. Okay, until you practice a bit more, maybe not use chainsaws in different ways. And Jack said definitely try to focus on one task at a time. What did you find from that, Jack? Becoming more focused on one helps stay calmer. That's brilliant, because we're not putting that pressure on ourselves. When we're trying to do one thing, it does not help to be thinking about doing another. You cannot do two things at once. Even multitasking, which people say, oh, women are great at, they're still not doing two things at once. They might be good at quickly flitting back and forward from one thing to another. They're only ever doing one thing at one time. Right, let's get back. So, connecting the dots. Steve Jobs makes a brilliant speech. If anybody's seen it, I'm sure if you Googled Steve Jobs connecting dots, you'll find it. It was at one of the university presentations, I think. And he says, looking back in his life, even though there were all these highs and lows, he can see why these things happened. So I just wanted to kind of, I guess, there's a lot more to my life than this, but these are very pivotal points working within the family business. Definitely highs and lows, but lots of highs. Absolutely loved it. Beckett's Farmers, Junction 3 of the M42. I'll make my dad very proud. And that led to taking a Nuffield Scholarship. And I will take this opportunity to say, when I got my Nuffield Scholarship, and I got mine on the second time round, it was an incredibly low period in my life. And I want to highlight that because I think people often associate that sort of low mood, and I'm sure it was poor mental health, but I didn't recognize it. I didn't know what stress was. I certainly didn't know what chronic stress was. And I think people sort of think that they associate it with you can't really get the job done. And I did. I managed to be successful in what I was doing at the time. I managed to cover up how I was actually feeling internally. So we can see people who seem successful and seem like they're getting on and doing things, but actually internally is a very dark place. But we have these highs and lows. It's what life is about. And it led to many highs of my Nuffield travels. And then after my Nuffield, I went on, and very, very grateful to Frank Parkinson, who the Frank Parkinson Trust, who sponsored this pilot to introduce mindfulness to agriculture. And again, Frank Parkinson's available to scholars who've recently completed their travels, and also to people who have done the Worshipful Company of Farmers Rural Leadership courses. So check that out. So this pilot, what did I do to introduce mindfulness to agriculture? And the first thing I did was I teamed up with somebody who I'd met on my Nuffield travels, a psychologist, Willie Horton, and he helped me, and still does today, kickstart this project. Funnily enough, I'd met Willie through Nuffield Islands, had him present at their conference, and they put us in touch together. And we created this video series, and it's still online at focusfarmers.com, and it looks to share with people how to train purposeful focus, the importance of goal setting, making decision making effortless, wouldn't that be nice, and the steps needed to banish stress. So I promoted this video series for a while, and then I found 29 farmers to take part in a 12-week, actually it was an 8 to 12 week program. In fact, it was 20 weeks around developing purposeful focus. So some of them had come, everybody watched the video series, but some had come through watching that video series. Some I think you'll see in the first session we did of this series in terms of the interviews, I perhaps was guilty of nagging a little bit. But what I really wanted was a range of people. So we had dairy farmers, arable farmers, beef, sheep farmers, pig, horticulture. Also had people within the ag industry, so people who we had farm secretaries and agronomists, and people providing services and products and running a business associated with ag. So wide range of people, about 80% men and 20% women. And I guess I'm just trying to show here, these were the elements that went into this program. So the knowledge exchange, very much of the things that I'm sharing with you in this series and what's in the video series, of trying to understand the why a little bit, and about this cognitive psychology and neuroscience behind why there's such benefits to this. The actual mental exercise, coaching and mentoring. And as I say, coaching I'd come across in my Nuffield, and the reason that coaching is so effective is it's more about asking questions than telling people what to do. And when you ask people questions, you lead them cognitively from A to D, G, whatever it might be, rather than throwing G at them and expecting them to understand what that is. Now, in terms of leadership and in a business, this can be quite frustrating, especially when we feel or think we don't have time. But again, it's perhaps stepping back and looking, if I spend time now asking people questions to lead them to what I want them to understand, if the behavior change is more sustainable and likely going to stick, then I'm not going to have to spend every day explaining this or asking them what to do. And I'm certainly not going to have to repeat myself. So in terms of a larger outlook on your time spent and productivity, I think it's definitely worth considering. There was the goal setting element, which we'll come to more next time. And we measured the results and reviewed measurement. As my dad would say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we measured in terms of a mindfulness measurement index, which is something Mark mentioned in the interview. And this is something that Willie Horton has developed in his 20 years of psychological research. So it's 100 statements that people score from 1 to 10. And they did this at the beginning of the program and then at the end. So this has given us some actual tangible results to look at. And we can see here, this is just the average of the people that took part in the original pilot. But we had a 25% increase in self-discipline, a 20% increase in purposeful focus, a 24% increase in positive state of mind, a 10% increase in flow. And for those that are not aware of what flow is, there's quite a lot of research into this. I can never say the guy's name. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, sorry, Mikhail. Flow is a state of mind. And there's particular elements that represent the state of flow. And I guess probably it's on the opposite end of the continuum or the spectrum of mental health. If you've got depression, chronic stress at one end, then flow is at the other. It's when you kind of lose your sense of time. It's when you've got no cares or worries in the world. It's when you're doing just what you need to do, when you need to do it to get done where you want to go or what you want to get done. So we might have small sections of flow in our life when we're really engrossed in an activity, when you're in the workshop and you're, you know, tinkering about, or maybe when you're maybe sitting on the tractor and you sort of get into those hours of whatever ploughing or spraying or harvesting you're doing, you know, suddenly you turn around and the job's done. But we can also experience these sort of larger states of flow in our lives, and mindfulness certainly increases this mindfulness and this mental training. And it reduces stress by 20%, or it certainly did in this program. So pretty cool results. And I couldn't let that go as just being this pilot. So those are the sort of quantitative results, and we had qualitative results as well. And as I say, stress management and goal setting is a personal thing. One man's stress is another man's motivation. And we saw in the last episode why that is. But Aaron says here, he's a beef and sheep farm for Wales. He said the main benefits from the program was gaining clarity of your goals, knowing what to do in every time frame. Gave him more energy, more focus, and more belief. That's self-belief. Carrie is a dairy farmer down in the south. She says the program has helped me readjust my focus as I venture into the next phase of running the farm and restructuring the business. And Aled, another 2015 Nuffield scholar, I love this one. He says, in my toolbox, I have many items, but the most important are my brain, my body, and my family. And the Focus Farmers program helped me protect all three. So as I said, Willie and I really couldn't let this go. So we've kind of continued the project, and the Purposeful program, Purposeful Focus program, I would now describe as a mindfulness-based program of developing focus coupled with proper goal setting. And the essence of the program is to banish the brain fog for good, develop true self-leadership, and take control of the one thing that we truly have ability to control in our lives, which is our own state of mind. So all this talk of mindfulness, what actually is it? The University of Massachusetts Medical School, which has done a lot of research into mindfulness, would say it's consciously paying non-judgmental attention in a very deliberate manner to the present moment. And that non-judgmental bit is key and almost seems impossible, certainly when you begin, and 5 years later for me, almost seems impossible, but we can train and start to train this in a very deliberate manner. It's much more you're paying attention with your senses. It's the University of Chicago would describe it as coming to your senses and in this present moment, which is truly all we really ever have. Even when we're somewhere back in the past or somewhere in the future, we're just in the present moment thinking about. So the scientifically proven way to increase one's mindfulness is through mental exercise. And this is just simple brain training. So just to describe this process, you would choose something to pay attention to focus on, more with your senses rather than the chattery self-talk and chatter mind. So often people choose the breath just because it's there all the time and it's free. You can pay attention to what's going on in your breath. You will become distracted. There will be a thought that enters your mind. When you notice that, you can let it go, not engage with this thought, regain your focus, and again, follow the breath. You'll get another thought into your mind. Sometimes that can distract us for minutes before we even realize, but then we don't get annoyed about it, don't get frustrated about it. We just notice, let it go, regain focus, and carry on. Right, if everybody remembers what I said last week about how we have our brain is this supercomputer that in every moment sort of we've got the stored knowledge that it's filtering through, and it's saying, what do I know about what's going on here? And it's also got these emotional attachments. Just be observing for a moment of yourself. Why I say that mental exercise is something people have been doing for thousands of years. And it's also known as meditation. Now, if anybody's gone eek inside there, perhaps you've come across meditation in the past as something associated to something you're not comfortable with, i.e. sitting on the floor cross-legged or chanting Om. And imagining a scenario that you're not particularly comfortable with. Well, just let that go. Refocus on me, active listening. You don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor, and you do not have to chant Om. You can sit comfortably in a chair with your feet on the ground and your hands in your lap. So, benefits of this mental exercise, we'll just go back to that term because everybody I come across, well, most people are more comfortable. Neuroplasticity. If anybody went and watched Doug Avery talk on the Resilient Farmer last year, which was organised by FCN, it was absolutely brilliant, lovely, lovely man. he said the word neuroplasticity. I was so excited. It was sort of the first time I'd ever heard this term mentioned, apart from what I've been banging on about for a number of years. When I was at school, or sort of leaving school, what I'd learnt was that by the time we got to 1821, getting into adulthood, that brain was developed, and it then started to deteriorate, and it was all downhill from there. It was incredibly depressing, but luckily the science was wrong. And what they've found, scientists have found, is that our brains are changing all the time, especially if we're doing something different, using it in a different way. Now, they came across this through children who had experienced trauma, brain traumas, and they thought that they wouldn't be able to talk again or walk again. And we're finding these children were making actually full recoveries. And when they looked at their brains and looked at what had happened, the brain trauma was actually still there. The damage was there in that area, but the brain had rewired itself around the damaged area. Another example is with taxi cab drivers, London cabbies. They have to learn what is called the knowledge. So they have to know pretty much every street in London and how to get from A to B in the quickest way. And their hippocampus, which is an area of the brain associated with spatial awareness, when they've been looked at under these brain scans, a London cabbie's hippocampus is extraordinarily large compared to another average adult brain. Now, if we look at this picture, we can see what this mental exercise or meditation does to us. So it does to our brain. The frontal lobes there, and you can see the red parts on the frontal lobes, which is here, is what we would know as your grey matter. So memory, concentration is all sort of operating in this area. And we can see the baseline data there, and then the meditation data, and we can see that this grey matter increases, which is really good news for us. And again, bearing in mind neuroplasticity, and our brains are changing all the time, it does not matter what age you are. If you start doing these exercises, you will still make changes. So there's a whole host of benefits of regular, and I'm going to say meditation in this case, because these are all scientifically proven, researched and proven. So I talked about all the benefits of bringing mindfulness into your business, but what does it bring to us personally, and what can it bring to you in your life? So as we just saw from the image there of the prefrontal lobes and the grey matter being increased, it strengthens your memory, it improves concentration. Probably one of the biggest reports, anecdotal reports, that we get from people who take this Purposeful Focus program is it increases their productivity. They get more done in the day. Because if you can get rid and not, or certainly not attached to, these random thoughts that we often get latched onto, or worries which are constantly going around in our head, what else could you be focused on? And people, it's like somebody said, it's like clearing out the crap, basically, and your productivity will increase. It develops emotional intelligence, as we saw earlier, those 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. Last week, I talked about your telomeres, which are these little biological clocks in your body which are damaged by cortisol. Meditation has been shown to actually repair those telomeres. So it reverses aging, your biological age. It promotes better quality of sleep, which is absolutely vital for our health. Things like Alzheimer's and dementia are very much being associated now with lack of sleep. And it enables creativity and innovation. If you remember last week, I said what the effects of stress were on the neural networks, that they actually start to contract. And actually we can't think clearly and we can't think logically, because when we were getting ready to fight this man-eating tiger or run away, we didn't have to think like that. The practice of meditation is and reducing the stress and all of these things coming together is going to allow those networks to flow as freely as possible, and that's when those nuggets arrive with us and reduces stress, as I've said a few times, and it boosts these periods of flow. Or I changed my language there slightly. It increases these times of flow that we have in our lives. And ultimately, for me, I think the overall benefit is that it enhances leadership, whether that's you leading others or leading yourself, or both. So, even more good news about it. Your amygdala and your insula, which are areas of the brain, they're the sort of reptilian parts of the brain, so very old areas of the brain. These are stimulated and engaged more when we do these mental training, these mental exercises. And these are two parts that work together, especially at night. So at night, what our mind, the unconscious mind, is doing is it's filtering through all of that information that it took through in the day, not just obviously what we were conscious of, but everything else that was coming to the mind, and it's sorting all that out and trying to make sense of it. That old adage, go and sleep on it, is pretty much because of this. So if we can go and sleep on it, everything kind of gets sorted in our mind, and in the morning we're much clearer on what direction we might take. There is a really nice exercise that I would recommend to people. If you have got this issue and problem, again, don't overthink it. Actually kind of step back a little bit from that. You might go for a walk or something and just have a few moments break. If it's something you've got time to sleep on, do that and ask your unconscious mind before you go to bed, knowing where you want to go, what is the best thing for you to do, and then don't think about it, just go to sleep. Ultimately, basically, your amygdala and your insula comes together to know as what is our gut instinct or our intuition. So just again, last week I said we're a sensor receptor taking in all this information through our senses. It gets filtered through this stored knowledge, which is built up over time as we've grown and developed. And growing, developing, adolescence is actually seen to be until the age of 29 now. So I don't think we can go around pointing fingers and saying, well, you're not an adult. There's certainly people of that age are certainly recognized as adults in society, but very much be aware that you are still soaking up a lot of the knowledge. And beyond that, I won't complicate things. But ultimately it gets filtered, and what we come up with is our version of reality. This part is really hard to explain. There's something that you get from mental training that is very difficult to put words to, but it's something like this, that what happens is, I guess, the self-awareness develops so that the stored knowledge at least kind of gets allowed to be put to the side. And as you make a reaction to something, at least you kind of maybe get a moment to say, hang on, is that actually how it is now? Or is that something of information I'm working on that was 30 years ago? And your intuition is developing, your gut instinct. And all I can say to people of that is, when they say, oh, is it my intuition or isn't it? Well, if you're questioning it, it's probably not. When we know what to do, we know what to do. And when people are brave and make brave decisions, we look from an outside perspective, they probably don't feel so much like that. They're just doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. So this is still coming down to our reality. And as I always say, this mental training is not going to change you from who you are. It's just going to make you this souped up version of yourself. So I had a mindfulness teacher say to me once, you can watch 100 books, read 100 books or watch 100 videos to try and understand what a tomato tastes like. But there's really only one way to know what a tomato tastes like. So if I can come out of here, I'm hoping everybody will take part in just a short exercise with me. If everybody's comfortable to do so, if you want, well, we will keep this on the recording, so if you're more comfortable, turn your video off. If you're okay with that, that's cool. I'd like you to sit back in your chair, fairly straight back, but still not too rigid. Feet flat on the floor, your hands in your lap, and just get comfortable. And the first thing I'd like you to do is take a breath in through your nose, really nice deep breath so you can hear yourself, or if you had someone next to you, they could hear you. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And you can make that nice sound. And again, do 2 or 3 of those, in through the nose and relax the body a bit, out through the mouth. And one more, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And if you're comfortable doing so, just let your eyes close as you then breathe out. And I'd like you to turn your attention to what you can hear. Just listen. If something comes through your mind, just don't engage, just listen. Now I want you to take your attention to the weight of your body in the chair. So what you can just feel that contact of your body in the chair. And now take your attention to your feet and the soles of your feet on the floor. Really paying attention to just what you can feel. Now you can take your attention to your breath, your breathing. And you might notice this in a number of ways. Perhaps your shoulders are moving as you breathe in and out. Perhaps your chest or stomach is moving in and out. Perhaps you can even feel the air in your nostrils. And I want you to choose the area that perhaps you feel that most strongly and pay all your attention to that area. And then as you're breathing in, I want you to sort of count that as 1. And as you're breathing out, 2, breathing in 3, and breathing out 4. And just follow that to a count of 10. If you've got distracted by a thought, just let it go and go back to where you left off, or start again at 1. And if you get to 10, just go back and start again at 1. Now I'd like you again to just take your attention to what you can hear. Just listen. And then I want you to take a really nice deep breath again. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back into the room. Nobody fallen asleep? I can't see some of those people there, but I'm hoping you're all good. You can give me a little chat if you want to just let me know you're all back here. That's it. That's the mental exercise. That's the mental training. That is the essence of mindful meditation. Everything we talk about is sort of varieties of meditation, but that's the ultimate thing. Oh, we got some thumbs up there. That's brilliant. Did feel close to sleep. Oh, light bulb moments. I like that already. A lot of people say to me, oh, I can't do meditation. I can't do that mental exercise because my mind doesn't shut off. My mind doesn't stop thinking. That's the point of it. If we go back to that cycle that I talked about, becoming distracted, regaining your focus, it's that is building the areas in your brain. That's what's making the changes. It's the same as if I went to the gym for my body and I lifted weights, and this action of lifting the weight up and down is going to build the muscles in my arm. This action or this process of being distracted and regaining focus is building the areas in your brain. One farmer described to me, it's the same as training your dog, pretty much. You're training your mind and in turn your body to sit like a dog and take full control of it so it does what you want it to do. So, optional exercises for this week, and I say optional because I am not in the business of telling anybody what to do, certainly how they should think or operate their own mind. I can only share this and allow people to take it up if they wish. But I'm setting you a challenge if you want to take it, and it is meditate, 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 meditate. Or if you're more comfortable, you can say mentally exercise for every day for 5 days. I always set people this 5-day challenge because this essence that I was saying that's very hard to explain can really only be experienced, and it seems to be the 4 or 5 day mark of doing this regularly. There's a link there, and we'll send you all these resources. There's some free resources there for some guided meditations. They're by Willie Horton, who runs the project with me, and they're all about 6 minutes long. So I'm asking that you take the challenge on, commit 6 minutes a day to you, and I'm predicting that this will make the other 23 hours and 54 minutes a whole lot better. If you perhaps don't want to take up the challenge but are more interested in this idea of being mindful in the present moment, non-judgmentally, coming to your senses, you might want to have 30 seconds listening, similar to just what you did then. So just take 30 seconds to listen to what you can hear. Mind will likely kick out something or kick in something. Just don't engage, let it go, just 30 seconds. Or this relax, breathe out, and then 20 seconds, just what you can feel on your breath. Or something like mindful eating, really taste and feel the food in your mouth. I'm not a big fan of mindful eating. I'm one of 4 kids, and my learnt behaviour is definitely eat it all quick before it goes. But I do try and take at least sort of one mouthful where I'm, you know, appreciative of my food. And I wish more people in society do this, because I think they would appreciate and be grateful to all the people that work so hard to put it on our table. Mindfulness is not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. That's not what I'm saying it brings to your life. There will still be stormy times, there will still be lows, there will still be challenges. That is life. But taking this up allows you to perceive it in a different way, have a different relationship to those challenges, and I think certainly have the self-awareness to get beyond those a lot quicker, so that you actually do have more sunshine and rainbows in your life. And the other thing I'll say is, it's not about positive thinking. It's about actually just controlling the thinking. Positive thinking can quite often lead us down the path to think something negative in the end anyway. But what the mental training does is that these 70,000 thoughts that fly through, and we are wired to think quite negatively, they just start to lessen. So we don't even have to manage it over time. You don't even have to manage it so much. And just a final point back to this central executive. I did say this would be a theme running through the workshops. The central executive, this area of attention, the attentional spotlight in our brain. Very, very active in children, not very active in adults unless we start doing something different, which does start to kick it into practice. This is what mental exercise will do. And this area of the brain is responsible for coordinating the rest. So we start to do what we do what we need to do when we need to do it to get where we want to go. And to get where we want to go, we need to decide. If we're gonna start switching our mind on, we've got to point it in the right direction. And that is what we will talk about next week, when we look at why vision and goal setting is essential for success.